So imagine you're a really brilliant high school math student.
Okay.
You sit down, you run the numbers, and you realize that your so-called free academic scholarship is actually, well, it's a financial trap.
Right.
It's quietly costing your family something like 42 lakh in all these hidden fees.
That's a lot of hidden fees.
Yeah. So to solve this, you do what, any rational math genius would do.
Hmm.
You start a massive, highly illegal cheating ring that could very easily end with you in federal prison.
Naturally.
Right. I mean, today we're taking a deep dive into why incredibly smart people make incredibly illogical choices and how the exact same mental glitches that cause a high school student to just risk everything are currently driving global superpowers to the brink of war.
It's a really fascinating paradox, honestly. We kind of just assume that having access to good data automatically leads to good decisions.
Yeah.
But as we're about to explore today, raw intelligence is basically useless if the underlying threat detection hardware in your brain is malfunctioning.
Exactly. And we have an absolutely wild stack of sources to prove that point today.
We really do.
Our mission for you, the listener, on this deep dive is to take this comprehensive masterclass on logical thinking. And we're going to use its frameworks, things like pattern recognition, cause analysis, bias awareness, as a sort of universal decoder ring.
A very necessary decoder ring.
Because we're applying these frameworks to a really chaotic mix of real-world materials. We've got intense international political headlines from May 2026. We've got the script of that high-stakes heist movie, Bad Genius.
Right.
Plus, updates on a high-pressure cricket final. And then just to cap it all off, some beautiful Hindi lofi tracks and late-night spiritual prayers.
Which I know sounds like a completely random assortment of digital noise.
It sounds chaotic.
It does.
Yeah.
But there is a very deliberate thread connecting all of it. True intelligence, it really requires understanding how our brains process information across wildly different environments. So the goal today is to help you shift from just being an automatic, reactive consumer of information to becoming a conscious, strategic thinker. We're looking for those hidden gears turning beneath the surface of the data.
Let's test that out immediately then with the first step of this masterclass, which they call the Thinking Awakening.
Right, the foundation.
Yeah. The course defines this as the ability to shift from emotional reactions to conscious observation. But to see if that actually works, we need to apply it to something that is inherently designed to short-circuit your logic.
And nothing does that better than the daily news cycle.
Exactly. I'm talking about our first source here, global geopolitical news. Because the headlines from May 2026 are just incredibly intense.
Extremely high pressure.
Right. So Iran has proposed this 14-point ceasefire plan via Pakistan, and they're laying down a very strict 30-day deadline. They're demanding the unfreezing of assets, the withdrawal of U.S. forces.
Which is a huge demand.
Huge. And over in the U.S., President Trump has responded by threatening Iranian leaders, literally comparing them directly to pirates. Yeah. And then Iran's counter-response is this threat to turn the Strait of Hormuz into a, quote, graveyard for American forces.
Things are escalating quickly.
And meanwhile, you have Germany and Oman frantically working diplomatic channels to keep the strait open because they're warning about a total collapse in global food security.
Yeah.
And just adjacent to all this, we're seeing statements about a Pakistan-India proxy war and major military posturing at the Wagah border.
That is an overwhelming amount of high-stakes information to process all at once.
It really is. Now, before we dissect this, I do want to lay down a quick ground rule for this deep dive.
Sure.
Because these headlines are highly politically charged, our job today isn't to figure out who is politically right or wrong here.
Right, we're not taking sides.
Exactly. We are not endorsing any of these viewpoints from the left, the right, the center, whatever. Our job is to put these statements under a microscope and look purely at the logical mechanics of how nations negotiate. We're just observing the communication strategy.
And that neutrality, that's actually the very first requirement of the thinking awakening.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because when you read a word like graveyard or pirates, your brain's amygdala basically hijacks your prefrontal cortex.
It's an instant emotional spike.
Exactly. The masterclass calls this availability bias. It's our evolutionary tendency to latch on to the most dramatic, easily imagined threats.
Like a pirate ship or a graveyard.
Right. Those words conjure a highly visible, immediate image of physical danger. Politicians use those specific words to intentionally trigger that bias in the public and, well, in their opponents.
They want you in a state of panic because panic forces a quick reaction.
Precisely.
But how do you actually step out of that? I mean, reading these headlines feels like walking into a room where everyone is just screaming at the top of their lungs.
You step out of it by applying what the masterclass calls the why
The
chain.
why chain. Okay.
A logical thinker refuses to engage with those emotional surface symptoms. So instead of reacting to the word pirate, they look at the structural incentives. They start asking, why is this specific language being displayed right now? What is the mechanical purpose of a 30-day deadline?
Oh, let's pull on that thread. Why 30 days? Like, why not 60 days or a 6-month negotiation window?
Because a 30-day deadline is an artificial constraint designed to force the other side into first-order thinking.
First-order thinking mean what exactly?
Meaning, when time is incredibly scarce, humans default to the most immediate solution just to relieve the pressure.
Just to make the ticking stop.
Yes. Iran's 14-point plan, which they delivered via Pakistan, uses that 30-day ticking clock to essentially bypass the U.S.'s ability to slowly build a coalition.
Ah,
The logical thinker observes this and realizes the deadline isn't, a literal countdown to destruction. It's a tactical lever to accelerate concessions.
I see. And Germany's involvement with Oman over the Strait of Hormuz, that isn't just about playing peacemaker, is it? It's cause analysis.
Exactly. They are looking at the supply chain.
Right, because if the strait closes, the immediate effect is a military standoff. But the secondary effect is a global shipping halt, which then leads to a tertiary effect, a massive food security crisis in Europe.
You've just described second and third order thinking perfectly.
Oh, wow.
Germany is completely ignoring the emotional rhetoric about graveyards. They are focusing entirely on the underlying economic variables. They are analyzing the system, not the noise.
But here's the terrifying part about availability bias and these logical failures. It doesn't just happen in the Oval Office or, the Strait of Hormuz.
No, it happens everywhere.
We use the exact same broken threat detection hardware to make decisions in our everyday lives. Which brings us back to that scenario I mentioned at the top of the show from the movie Bad Genius.
The transition from international diplomacy to a high school classroom is surprisingly seamless, actually.
It really is.
Because the human brain's mechanisms remain identical. The scale changes, but the logical pitfalls, they do not.
So let's break down the mechanics of this plot from our sources. We have Lynn, who is an absolute mathematical prodigy. Her father runs a modest laundromat.
Right.
She scores a scholarship to this prestigious school run by a principal named Miss Walsh, and Lynn immediately applies cause analysis to her own life.
She starts doing the math.
Yes, she calculates the hidden variables of this supposedly free scholarship. She adds up the bus fares, the taxi rides when she studies late, the really expensive books, the mandatory new uniform.
And she realizes it's going to cost her family around 42 lakh.
Exactly. She correctly identifies that the initial framing of the scholarship was deceptive.
And at the same time, she's dealing with contrasting pressures.
Right. Her wealthy friend Grace is struggling academically and needs a 3.4 GPA to audition for Juilliard. And that endeavor costs another 10 lakh.
So the pressure is building.
Yes. So when another wealthy student named Pat offers Lynn this massive immediate payout to run a cheating ring, she actually agrees.
Which is a huge leap.
And she invents this brilliantly complex code using piano chords, like fingering A, B, C, and D on her desk to secretly signal multiple choice answers during exams.
It is a truly remarkable display of tactical problem solving.
It is, but it is also a catastrophic failure of logic.
Absolutely.
It's like thinking you've successfully hacked a video game to get unlimited lives, but you're actually just unplugging the console from the wall.
That's a great way to put it.
She trades a 42 lakh financial headache for an ethical, academic, and legal nightmare. If she's so good at cause analysis, where is her logic completely falling apart?
Her logic fractures at the boundary of what the masterclass calls the decision framework.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Well, Lynn is a master of calculation, but calculation is not logic. Lynn is entirely trapped in that first-order thinking we talked about earlier.
Ah, right. She's just looking at the immediate problem.
Yes, she looks at the highly visible result. The 10 lakh payout, the immediate relief for her dad's laundromat, and the promise of Pat buying her a new car so she can commute.
She solves the immediate pain point,
Right.
just like reacting to a 30-day political deadline.
Exactly. But she totally abandons assumption testing.
How so?
She assumes that because she understands this complex piano code, it is foolproof. She completely forgets that she is injecting unpredictable human variables into the equation.
Oh, like the other students.
Right. What are the second-order consequences if the examiners notice a pattern of synchronized desk tapping? What are the third-order consequences if one of the students in the cheating ring just gets nervous and confesses?
Wow. So she models the math, but she completely fails to model the humans.
And that stems from a much deeper issue that's highlighted in the masterclass. Her foundational mental model is corrupted.
Corrupted.
Yes, because Lynn discovered the school's fee structure was somewhat deceptive, she built a sweeping, untested assumption that the entire system is fundamentally corrupt.
Oh, and once you build a mental model that says, hey, the whole game is rigged anyway, it creates this massive blind spot.
Yep.
You start justifying your own unethical actions because you assume you're just, playing by the real rules of a broken system.
Her logic became entirely defensive. She used a single piece of evidence, those hidden fees, to justify a totally disproportionate response.
Yeah.
It blinded her to the massive asymmetric risk she was taking on. She didn't weigh the probability of success against the severity of the failure.
That distinction between calculation and logic is huge. But wait, so if personal decisions, like Lynn's, require this incredibly careful step-by-step second-order thinking, how do we apply logic to public events that have millions of moving parts?
That is the ultimate challenge.
I won't push back on this masterclass for a second. Let's look at our next batch of sources.
Let's see what the frameworks lead us.
Okay, so we have the PSL 11 final happening at Gaddafi Stadium. It's a massive cricket match. Peshawar Zalmi, captained by Babar Azam, going up against the Hyderabad Kingsmen, captained by Labuschagne.
Very high stakes.
Yeah, there's a $1 million prize on the line. The stadium is packed. The noise is deafening. Now, if the logical masterclass tells us we need to constantly test assumptions, run cause analysis, look for second-order consequences, isn't that a recipe for disaster in a sport?
How do you mean?
Well, if Babar Azam stops to run a 14-point logical evidence-thinking matrix while a 150-kilometer-per-hour delivery is flying at his head, he's getting bold. Like, does too much logic actually ruin human instinct?
It is a brilliant question, but it relies on a bit of a misunderstanding of what instinct actually is.
Okay, explain.
The masterclass addresses this through the concept of pattern recognition. Instinct in a high-level athlete like Babar Azam is not the absence of logic.
But from the outside, it looks like pure, unthinking reflex.
It appears that way purely because of the speed, but what you are actually witnessing is rapid, unconsciously optimized logic.
Unconsciously optimized.
Yes. His brain has processed tens of thousands of deliveries over his career. When that ball leaves the bowler's hand, his mind isn't empty. It is instantly matching the microscopic details, the seam position, the arm angle, the trajectory against this vast internal database of historical evidence.
Wow.
He is applying a probability mindset in milliseconds.
So sports instinct is essentially just an ultra-fast query of past data.
Yes, but, and this is where the masterclass gets critical, what works flawlessly for a batsman facing a fast bowler is utterly disastrous for a leader making policy decisions.
Oh, which brings us to the other half of your source material regarding the Sindh chief minister, Murad Ali Shah.
Exactly.
Right. So the sources detail him basically going viral for showing off his fitness, literally jumping over obstacles while inspecting the Red Line mass transit project in Karachi. And this is all while extreme temperatures are hitting 47 degrees Celsius in Moabsha.
That energetic obstacle jumping behavior is the political equivalent of a cricket reflex.
That's true.
It generates an immediate positive first-order reaction, a great photo op. But governance requires slow, deliberate, strategic thinking.
Because it's not a split-second game.
Right. A mass transit project affects millions of lives and takes years to complete. A logical leader cannot operate on reflexes. They must look at what the masterclass calls base rates.
Base rates. Break that down for me.
Base rates are the historical probabilities of an event happening within a specific category.
Okay.
So a leader using a probability mindset doesn't just look at the blueprints for the red line and assume success just because everyone is working really hard. They ask, what is the base rate of success for mass transit projects of this scale globally? Historically, what percentage of them suffer massive budget overruns?
And how does that 47-degree heat factor in?
That is a crucial variable. They must calculate the base rate of material failure-like concrete setting times an extreme prolonged heat.
Right. You can't just jump over structural engineering challenges the way you jump over a puddle for a camera.
Exactly. In complex systems, you don't look for absolute certainty, and you certainly don't rely on instinct. You operate strictly on likelihoods and build contingencies for the rest.
So Bebar Azam relies on micro-pattern recognition, while a chief minister must rely on macro probability. But it's the same logical toolkit, just tuned to completely different frequencies.
That is an excellent way to summarize it.
Okay, my brain is honestly feeling the cognitive load of all this analysis right now.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. We've jumped from international diplomatic standoffs
Mm-hmm.
to the ethics of high school math geniuses, to the physics of cricket, to the base rates of urban infrastructure.
Right.
To successfully process all this without just burning out, the brain has to have some kind of defragmentation process. Which brings us to the most surprising concept from the masterclass sources: mind clarity.
And without mind clarity, every other framework we've discussed today, bias awareness, base rates, second-order thinking, it completely falls apart.
And it perfectly explains the wildly contrasting final sources in our stack.
Yes.
Because amidst all this heavy global news, we have these deeply soothing pieces of audio. We have a Hindi Lufi track called Hum Piki Si Rat Hai, which is all about, midnight peace, rain, and slow breathing.
Beautiful.
Yeah. We also have an extensive late-night spiritual prayer, the Rat Son Ki Dua, which involves the rhythmic recitation of the names of Allah, asking for peace and protection.
Right.
Oh, and tucked randomly between them is this mundane snippet about someone getting an HEC degree attestation via courier.
Which is actually the perfect antagonist to our story. It is the literal embodiment of digital noise.
Okay, I have to play the skeptic again here. Isn't zoning out to a lo-fi beat about the rain or repeating a long spiritual prayer the exact opposite of being a logical master?
How so?
Well, if the goal is to be highly analytical and hyper-aware of your biases, tuning out into a repetitive rhythm feels like you are just turning off the machine entirely. Provide some proof here. How does checking out help you think clearer?
It goes back to the concept of attention control. We kind of assume that being logical means your brain's engine must be redlining at maximum RPMs all day long.
Yeah, that you're always calculating.
But the masterclass highlights that cognitive capacity is a finite resource. When you are bombarded by information overload like geopolitical threats mixed with random degree attestations popping up on your phone, your working memory becomes completely fragmented.
Your threat detection hardware gets jammed by too many false signals.
Precisely. You cannot recognize complex patterns or run second-order consequence models if your brain is constantly vibrating with chaotic noise.
Okay.
Stepping away into the rhythmic, predictable poetry of a chill lo-fi beat, or engaging in the focused, repetitive recitation of a prayer is not shutting the machine down. It is an active form of attention control.
So it's not an escape from reality.
No, it acts as a mechanical reset. The repetitive nature of the audio gives your hyperactive, anxious mind a single, predictable focal point. It dramatically lowers the cognitive load. And when you remove the chaotic input, you allow your subconscious mind to actually process and file away all the complex mental models you've been absorbing throughout the day.
It really is like defragmenting a hard drive.
Yeah.
You have to actively stop downloading new files for a moment and let the system quietly organize the data it already has, or the whole computer just crashes.
Exactly. Silence, reflection, and focused repetition are the literal maintenance tools for a logical mind.
Without that regular maintenance, your logic will always be hijacked by the loudest, most frightening stimulus in your environment. You will fall right back into availability bias.
So you'll be back to reacting to pirates and graveyards.
This completely reframes how I look at downtime. It isn't a distraction from doing the hard analytical work. It is a prerequisite for it.
It absolutely is.
We started today with a stack of sources that seemed bordering on chaotic. But by using this masterclass as our decoder ring, the underlying mechanics of everything suddenly became visible.
Logic truly is a universal language once you learn the vocabulary.
For you listening, think about the immense toolkit you've just acquired. The next time you're scrolling through your feed and you see a terrifying headline with an arbitrary deadline, you can activate your thinking awakening.
Step back.
Right. Step back. Recognize the emotional triggers designed to hijack your amygdala and start asking about the underlying incentives.
And when you face a high-stakes personal decision, don't let a flawed mental model blind you.
Yes. Don't be Lynn from Bad Genius. Do the math, sure, but then do the logic. Run the assumption testing. Ask yourself, and then what?
Find those second and third order consequences.
Exactly, before you act. Recognize the difference between the rapid pattern recognition needed for a split-second sport and the slow, statistical base rate thinking required for long-term planning. And finally, give yourself the permission and the active discipline to filter out the digital noise.
You have to.
Put on that lo-fi track, say that prayer, and defragment your mind.
Mastering those frameworks means you stop merely surviving the flow of information and you start strategically navigating it.
I couldn't agree more. Now, to wrap up our deep dive today, we always like to leave you with a final thought. We spent a lot of time discussing how these logical frameworks protect us from our own emotional reactions and cognitive blind spots.
We have.
But the expert has a slightly more dangerous angle for you to consider as you head into the rest of your week.
We've treated logic today as a shield. But consider what happens when the concepts from this masterclass, pattern recognition, base rates, second-order thinking, and availability bias, are used not to protect, but to actively manipulate. Someone engineered that 30-day political deadline. Someone calculated the exact phrasing to trigger your fear. If the human brain is naturally hardwired to find patterns, and logic is the art of breaking false patterns, ask yourself today, what is one absolute truth you firmly believe about your own life right now that might actually just be an untested assumption?
Wow, that changes everything. Once you realize the maze was built by someone else, you finally know how to find the exit.